Good morning and welcome to a teaser introduction video of Purple Ponderings with Pankaj, a new podcast about all things IoT. And I'm extremely excited to have the one and only Insurance Nerds co-founder Nick Lamparelli, who's everywhere all around the world.
I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic to be a part of this. I'm ecstatic. First, there's got to be it was absolutely a necessity to have a podcast on IoT, and you were the perfect person to do it. So when we had this conversation, you said that you would be interested in doing it, man, I was ecstatic. This was such a great idea.
Yeah, so Nick, and I got really excited when you mentioned that we should do this because I've known you, for some time now, and remember very clearly our very first conversation where you had mentioned, and I remember this very clearly. It said this that hey, if you hadn't, started working on flood insurance and how, that whole product could be looked at it from a very different lens, you would be doing something on the IoT space, right? And I still remember that excitement came through. And frankly speaking, it was a big encouragement to someone like me to say that, look, I'm on the right path. So, with all the different interviews that you've done, Nick, tell me, why is it that this particular topic intrigues your interest?
Mostly because I think it's with, so if we talk about the concept of IoT, Internet of Things, sensors, there's such a wide ranging potential use for them to really drive down loss costs, right? It's the first, a lot of the insurtechs, Pankaj, have come in and, they've, we want to make it easier for the customer to buy. I get it. Makes sense. We want to make it easier for them to file a claim. I get it. Makes sense. But a lot of the tech that's come in isn't really aligning the interests of the property owner and the insurer. IoT is the one technology that does that. Can really drive down loss costs, and it's a bigger win-win than just the property owner wins or the insurer wins. What I love about IoT is society wins. You should have fewer fires, fewer devastating fires, fewer burglaries, fewer robberies, less vandalism, less water damage. I mean, ultimately, if we can drive down loss costs, it's better for society, right? It frees up capital that can go to other things to make society much better off. So that's what excites me about it. Frankly, it's that one technology where it's like you can make a truly evolutionary change to what insurance is and kind of flip it on its head a little bit, right? We have these awesome tech devices and they're doing cool things, and insurance can tag along with it versus insurance just being a piece of paper. That's what excites me about it.
Yeah, and to that last point, let's talk about that a little bit, because that's also the big reason why we saw this as a, people talk about digital transformation, Nick. To us, this is the true transformation where, the traditional definition of insurance itself is, here's an opportunity to change that completely from being a reaction based to being, prevention based, being proactive. So let's talk a little bit about, if can you describe in your words, let's say, magically, and we'll talk about the barriers which are currently holding, sort of the wide adoption of this technology. But from your perspective, assuming that this world has realized the value of IoT the way you see it, help me describe how would you describe this world to be, right? What was that world look like when you fully realized the potential of IoT?
Yeah, so I think it in a way it goes beyond IoT. In a way, IoT just happens to be the digital equivalent to loss control, right? And so it's what factory mutuals have been doing for hundreds of years now, which is fire has been like this devastating thing. let's figure out how to prevent the fire from happening. And if it does happen, how do we mitigate it so it prevents loss? That's where I think IoT fits in. It brings industrial level loss control down to the masses. Okay. And so my vision of it is the framework, the skeleton of the model is we, property owners, insureds, it doesn't have to be property, we should be we should have an alignment of interests with our insurance companies. In fact, neither one of us wants a claim, right? But the economic incentives are not set up that way to encourage the property owner to do everything in their power to prevent a claim from occurring. So our framework, the way, you know, I kind of envision this in the future is that with the proper incentives, both the property owner and the insurer both don't want to claim, and put economic conditions in place where prevention is part of the business strategy. Let's prevent a loss from occurring. And if a loss does occur, let's minimize its impact. Even then, there's going to be spillover. That's what the insurance is for. I think we've kind of flipped this the wrong way, where it's like, I buy a property, I immediately go buy insurance. It's like, well, insurance should be the last thing we worry about. That's the spillover. What we should really be worrying about is, let's prevent fires from occurring. Let's prevent floodwaters from getting in. If a fire does occur, let's make sure it doesn't spread to the entire building. Let's put those pieces in place. And then if there's, again, spillover loss, insurance is there. My vision of this is that all of those are intrinsically tied together. From prevention to mitigation to risk transfer, they're all tied together so that the economic incentives make it worthwhile. There's a return on investment if you put in a sprinkler system, if you put in a sensor, you know, if you have a Nest camera that prevents people from breaking into your home. You know, all of those things will drive down loss costs, and it's in everybody's best interest.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. It's the absolute alignment to that outcome, right? Economic alignment. And interestingly, you know, we talk about sort of an opportunity in this industry to also, on the back of this prevention angle, to look at changing the way we have that relationship today, right, between the insurer and the insured, where there isn't a lot of trust. A lot of the insureds see this as a complicated product that they have to understand. But just the way you described it, if you flip it, then it's very easy to understand that it's all about protection and safety.
Yeah.
Right? It's protection and safety, and for the part which is very, very, unique and is not covered, or that's what you write the product for. And I think you and I have talked about this unique opportunity we have in rewriting what that new insurance product could be. So Nick, could you talk a little bit about from your perspective, how long do you think is it going to take for us to, because it's going to be adopted very slowly, but from your perspective, what's that time horizon look like, and what are the barriers that you see that can accelerate this adoption, or basically compress that timeline to make it be realized sooner?
Yeah, I think 10 years, probably. Your company is a very important cog in speeding up, the implementation of this, because you have all of the technical issues, which are, do I need to buy all of my devices from the same company? How do I coordinate all of this stuff? Then there are the issues with, well, where's the data going? Who owns it? Who controls it? What are you doing with it? That stuff has to still be ironed out, all the way to, how does the insurance policy interact with it? What if my company is issuing a policy with the assumption that there's all of these IoT sensors, and I'm giving a discount because I'm expecting the loss costs to go down, and the power goes out. the internet goes out. What does that mean? Do I still provide the discount? Aren't I now vulnerable as the insurance company? I think a lot of those details need to be ironed out. I think what could speed things up is outside players coming in. I see no reason why a Comcast or a Verizon couldn't just have IoT sensors as part of their cable package, right? And then partner with some insurance company to kind of link up the risk transfer. So my guess is that it's going to be like 5 to 10 years, probably closer to 10 years. But I think it's insure techs like yours or outside entrants that come in and kind of push the envelope a little bit. So uh, I'd like to flip the question back to you. Same question. You're in the business. I mean, can you guys survive if it takes 5 or 10 years for insurance companies to kind of pick up on this?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think I was that 10-year answer that you gave is an interesting one because I was recently in an event, and somebody who has been in the industry for a very long time, as an investor, was sharing this view that if startups don't envision a 10 years journey, right, for realizing their vision, then they shouldn't be doing it, because it doesn't mean that you have to wait for 10 years for
Right.
things to happen. Things will incrementally evolve. So my perspective is that I do think that I think there's going to be different stages, Nick. Right? Step one, I feel, is all about, to the question that you mentioned, right? How how do we develop the technology to integrate these different devices? How do we make it really easy on the end insured, right? In the case of personal lines, to be
And
able to
and
align.
yeah, both the insured and the insurer. How do we make it easy for them,
How
right?
do we make exactly? How do we make it easy? And our view is that from an insurer perspective, they shouldn't be worried about, well, what kind of device goes in where. I think at the end of the day, they should be able to look at the property configuration, the characteristic, and just put a finger on what's the real risk that they see on that property, and we can then figure out the right technology solution that goes in that mitigates that risk for the at a cost point which fits into the ROI, right, for that
Yep.
insurer. That's what they care for. If I'm going to incur a little expense ratio and that goes up a little bit, is that going to move down the does the loss ratio impact higher than that or not, right? And what's the probability for that loss ratio to go down as a result of this expense? So I think that's how we've looked at it. I think the second stage of this is really where I think we'll come to a stage where the insured will have the option to really be able to, um, give their preferences, which is, hey, Mr. Insurance Company, you want to collect my data. I'll do all of these things that you tell me to do for my property, which I like, but give me the ability to monetize this data sharing ability, right? To me, that's where I think we're going to go, where today people are, collecting all kinds of data without even asking me. My view is that one day we should be able to give that power back to the homeowner, insured, sorry, individual, to say, if you are willing to share the data completely, you'd get the biggest discount, right? Because then you're being open about it.
Yeah.
If you want to anonymize your data and share that, sure, go ahead and you'll get maybe an appropriate discount. Or maybe you're one of those people who don't want to share the data at all, but you do that knowing that therefore you will not be able to take advantage of all the discounting that could be possible in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I feel that.
That's where I think this specific podcast and what it is you're trying to do, and we should probably talk about your vision for the podcast and what you're going to do. But what I hope is that you can touch on all of these different aspects, because there is no source for that information now. So to have a podcast and content based around, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Insured, right? Here are the issues you need to worry about. And, here's how this is going to help you. all the way up to the insurers and the reinsurers and helping them with the issues that they have not focused on and everything in between. You know, I'm hoping, like, between the educational part and talking to folks, that that your podcast can become a a central thought leadership area for this burgeoning area. I just know, if I Google it, I can find bits and pieces, Pankaj, but I can't find the full thread that's going to answer all of my questions. I think you have a tremendous opportunity with this podcast to do just that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what my vision is, Nick, which is that people, the leaders that are actually going to impact the adoption of this, both from an insured and insurer perspective, have limited availability of resources that can educate them, right? Given that, I'm living and breathing this 24/7, what I'm hoping is that as a result of this podcast, whatever be the length of this podcast, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, they're able to get the real practical sense of what are the options available today, right? And how does that practically, move the needle from an industry, and also providing that 360-degree view. I just feel that getting different stakeholders to share their perspectives, right, is also very important, right? So I think,
Yeah.
we've talked about loss ratio, right? So there's that angle. There's the product differentiation angle.
Yeah, just from is Nest the appropriate tool? When is it not? It'd be good to have the ability to kind of compare products side by side, both from the insurance company standpoint to the insured, right? Because I'm sure there's different values, different costs and expensive associated with it, different trade-offs with choosing one over the other. And it would be good to have an unbiased central area of content: video, audio, written, databases, tables that can help coordinate all of this information, because it's just going to be so overwhelming. And the last thing you want is like silos where there are like three experts, and they're the gurus and everyone else is kind of scratching their heads and guessing. There's a democratization that I think that your podcast could handle, and we need to tell this audience where this name came from.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick, because I think it was a pretty interesting story on how we settled on this name. So go ahead.
Purple Ponderings with, or is it by with?
Purple Ponderings with Pankaj is the name that we landed
Yes.
on, and we had some other very
Yeah.
interesting entries to this contest.
Yes. So it was a discreet vote on Insurance Nerds for that. Purple obviously is a shout out to Purple Ant, which is the name of your company, right? And we wanted it to be an alliteration or something that had a rhyme that you, the listener, would just say, "Oh yeah, I know what that is." Can't be confused with anything else. Although I think your name is like Bob in India, so that might be confusing because they'll be like, "Well, which Bob are we talking about?" But anyways, we had a mini vote on it, and Purple Ponderings with Pankaj won in a landslide.
Yeah, the triple P, as I have started to think about it, right?
Triple P.
Triple
Great,
P
great branding. But to kind of reiterate, I just think IoT and sensors are going to be huge, and I think we're just scratching the surface when it comes to IoT. I think they've projected that they're going to be trillions of micro sensors and sensors that are going to be spread out all over the world. I'm already investigating sensors for external stuff, like potentially like for golf courses, to put in water sensors that can measure when a green might be inundated with water, and to deploy a flood defense. So like our ability to use them in auto, property, I'm sure it won't be long before it's used in casualty, supply chain, cargo, marine business, inland marine. Like it's just going to be overwhelming. And I, anytime I have questions about IoT, I always go to you. So it's just a natural that it was like, Pankaj, you got to do it. You have to help us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you hadn't pushed, this wouldn't be possible. So I'm super
I'm a bully.
thankful to you. No, but I think it's also a good way to, I think, get the word out, right? Because anytime a new technology, emerging technology, impacts an industry, getting that word out often, and to as many people as possible is important in the adoption of the technology. So I think that's what we're hoping to do. Question for you, Nick, is as we do this podcast and I would want to interview different stakeholders, what are the name three people that you think I should talk to or get in touch with to do some subsequent episodes?
Well, I think we should broadcast this and get the audience. We'll know how many of the audience actually listens to the whole thing if they get this far, since we're getting close to the end. But when I think of IoT and I think of sensors, I think of you and I think of Matteo Carboni. So folks that I would like to learn more about his observatory, and I would like to learn what's happening globally. The folks from Octo, so car sensors. And that is the telematics is the one area where sensors and IoT have really grabbed on. They are right now a part of the insurance ecosystem without a doubt. How do we transport that? What are the lessons that we can learn from that? I think there are a lot of lessons that we already have learned. And what are the things that we've gotten wrong in those areas? Maybe property's different, I don't know, but those are the first things that kind of come off top of my head. The folks that are doing telematics and Matteo.
Got it. So we'll keep that in mind, and just as you suggested, maybe we will do a mini poll on our InSnerd Slack channel to see
Yes.
who else does the audience want to hear. So we'll try that out, and then so the last thing before we close off, Nick and I, this is a question that to me is a good way to understanding the personality of an individual. And the question for you is this: if I were to define a visionary leader as someone that, with no axe to grind, with no vested interest, is someone that you think of that, oh my gosh, I want to be this person, right? If I would say that that's how I define a leader, who is that one person that comes to your mind with that background, and why does that person inspire you?
I would say someone like Warren Buffett, probably. Probably because he has built an entire career on credibility, and that takes a backseat to nothing. I have a fake background here that I think you can see from my video. My green screens is flipping out. This is to make my background good. Warren Buffett doesn't have those kind of phony things. He is who he is. He doesn't try to pretend to be someone else. And when he comes into a room, his credibility is so high that he's just brings in a massive amount of trust. Things he says are taken very seriously because he's a very serious person. And I just think from a leadership perspective, I can't think of too many people that are in that category. Maybe Bill Gates, before he died, Stephen Covey. I was someone that I kind of put in that category of leader. They have all of the credentials. They have the history, the experience of really coming through results. they have results in spades. And so I don't know, that's sort of who I think of.
Excellent. So credibility is important to Nick. So we get that. All right, cool. All right. On that note, Nick, I think we've pretty much come to the end of our very first podcast. Thank you so much for being our very first guest, and hope that we take this podcast and achieve the vision that you and I both described on this show.
If you have me as your first guest, you can only go up from there. So
Nick,
it
on that
was a
note,
pleasure. I mean, I'm thrilled to be the first guest, and I'm thrilled that you finally listened to me and you decided to do this. So for those of you that are out there listening, this is going to be awesome, because now anytime I have a question about IoT, I'm going to say, Pankaj, you gotta make a video or animation or something and teach us what is happening. I get my alert updates from your moisture devices. How does that work? Teach me. So now the pressure's on you, buddy.
no worries. We'll demystify all of that and make it very simple to people, so that they can relate to it, very easily. So, thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. And
Awesome.
talk to you soon.
Till next time.